Welcome to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. It's the 5th of December 2021, 5 days into summer. I'm Sean Aylmer. This is our Sunday show where we have a bit of a change of pace and we look at some of our favourite stories from the week. As always, I'm joined by the Fear and Greed team. Adamski, a.k.a. Adam Lang, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Mickey T, a.k.a. Michael Thompson, good morning.
Hello, Sean.
Did you both have a good week? Are you happy that we're in summer, Michael?
At last. This year just seems like it's just been too cold, too wet, and a little bit miserable. And I know I'm starting the show on a bit of a down note there, but I'm very happy that it's finally summer.
Let's bring someone a little bit more upbeat.
Where are we going to find them?
Adam.
Yeah, sure.
Did you have a good week, Adam?
Had a great week. End of November, beginning of December, beginning of summer. It feels like we're screaming towards the end of the year at a rate of knots. So, yeah, it's been a good week.
Any audience feedback, Michael, this week?
Yeah, actually, a couple of good pieces of feedback this week. This one came from Danny, who said, thanks very much. And he refers to Adamski as Adamski, so he's clearly a very close listener to the Sunday show.
We have achieved our goal.
That's right.
People start walking around the place calling Adam Lang Adamski.
Because Adam is someone who has he's had a very distinguished corporate career.
Absolutely.
And has been really got a lot of credibility. And I think piece by piece we're breaking that down.
Look, no one's taken the mickey out of Adam as we do, ever.
What are friends for?
That's right.
Friends. Ooh.
Oh, it is our calling. Anyway, Danny...
I'll get a whack for that too.
Back to Danny.
Danny said, Adamski, very much enjoy the podcast, and you have booted the BBC News podcast off my list as my go-to in the morning, which is great because I don't know why I was listening to the BBC in the first place. Bunch of hacks compared to Fear and Greed.
Yeah. What have they ever done? What story have they ever broken?
Well, none. I mean, that's actually blatantly wrong, but nothing.
In the last 3 minutes.
Yeah,
None.
that's right. In fact, even that could well be wrong. But the other piece of feedback was from Greg, who commented on Facebook. First-time poster, long-time listener, and he's actually done something that we haven't had before, a request for us to interview the CEO of one of his favourite companies. So maybe this is a new thing that we could start in the next... might be a 2022 thing, really. Yeah. Listener requests, and we're kind of really transitioning now into a top 40 music station where we're taking listener requests.
Yeah. Fair enough, Michael. Well, that's always nice to get feedback. Of course, you can leave feedback at fearandgreed.com.au or on any of our socials. On to the newsletter. Adamski, you spent a lot of time working on this newsletter every week. What was your favourite story out of the newsletter?
It's a labour of love, Sean. And for me, it was Edison's invention of the phonograph in 1877. So this week in 1877, sound recording began. And, of course, the music industry or the recorded music industry began from it.
Close to your heart.
Yeah, very much.
He not a bad bloke, Thomas Edison.
Is that right, Sean?
A few strings to his bow, shall we say?
You sound like you knew him personally. And look, I know I've had a few jibes at your age this week when you were talking about the increase in the number of adult nappies in China, but I did not think you were quite that aged.
Well, you know. It was a cracking story, that one. What about you, Michael? What was your favourite newsletter moment?
My favourite story was probably the bloke who bought a drawing at a house clearance sale in the US. He paid $30 for it and then just tucked it away in a drawer. A couple of years later, turns out the drawing is an original, previously unknown work of a German artist. It's 500 years old, worth up to $50 million US. Which is pretty spectacular. I love these stories. It's like Antiques Roadshow, but without any of the rubbish where things aren't actually worth anything. But the thing is, he must have actually really liked the drawing because I wouldn't pay $30 for an unframed, dodgy old drawing at a garage sale. And I don't actually think it looked very good. This bloke might have been a German master, but not in my books.
What was it of? A drawing of what?
A woman and a child. Yeah. I think it might have actually been the Virgin Mary. So
Some woman and child.
We haven't even got the safe word yet. We had a bit of an art theme, though, because we also had the story this week of Freud, the artist, apparently refusing to concede that he had done a nude self-portrait. So even until after he died, he said it wasn't his work, but it turns out it was his work.
Yeah, I think, look, it's the same theme, because I think these stories are always great about people with either undiscovered works, or in this particular case, about a collector who had a work that could have been worth $30, $40, $50 million, but unable to sell it because before he died, the artist refused to verify that it was real because he was embarrassed about his self-portrait.
I have another newsletter favourite. I just wanted to know which of you two talked about NATO and the video of the 5 NATO incidents.
Oh, yes, that was me,
That
Sean.
had Adam all over. What I loved about the story, right, we celebrated the 2nd anniversary of the 70th anniversary of the forming of the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, NATO. So if you go back to the newsletter, we didn't say 72 years ago. We said it's the 2nd anniversary of the 70th anniversary of NATO. And here's some funny videos about what people think of Donald Trump and how he appeared before the Queen in Buckingham Palace. Adamski, did you ever think when you were putting that together we should just do the 72nd rather than the 2nd anniversary of the 70th?
Sean, I'm just going to do a steward's inquiry as we speak here. It might not surprise you to know. Just a little bit of a fact check.
Okay, so let's talk safe word. You do a fact check while we think safe word.
Be careful with that word.
That's right. When I read it on the day, I thought, that's really hilarious that we're celebrating the 2nd anniversary of the 70th anniversary, but who am I to change that? Adamski's done it. Safe word of the week.
Oh, look, I have a suggestion, and fact check could well be one of them because I just want to hear someone stuff it up. Question for you, Sean.
Yes.
Collins Foods.
Yes.
Owns KFC in Australia.
Yep.
What's the other company, the other brand that Collins Foods owns?
Taco Bell's a big one, and
Taco
also
Bell.
one of your all-time favourites, though I don't think there's any in it. There might be one left in Australia, but there certainly is in Europe, Sizzler.
No, I'm pretty sure the last Sizzler has now closed. But no, I was intrigued by your pronunciation of the word taco, Taco, because you, when we pulled you up on that the other day, when we were talking about the story about Collins Foods and the 13% rise in its share price, and you talked about Taco Bell this and Taco Bell that, and we pulled you up on your pronunciation of it, and you commented to us off air that people have been criticizing you all your life for the way you say taco. And I just wondered, has it ever occurred to you that you could in fact be saying it wrong? If everyone is telling you that it is incorrect, you could well be one of the most stubborn people I have ever encountered.
Really?
I'm not.
No.
So will you concede that it's not correct, or is it?
No, I won't.
Well, he's a journalist and a master of words, so how could he be wrong?
Text, not audio. The mean streets of Orange in country New South Wales. It was taco, mate. Where you grew up in Canberra, or wherever the flash place you were, and wherever you grew up at Adamski, which we've found out in recent times is about 17 places around the world, they might have called it taco, but the mean streets of Orange, it was taco.
You might not be familiar with the small town of Henty with the population of 1,000. I don't think anyone's ever described Henty as being flash before.
Good point. Very good point.
So I was proposing taco as your safe word for this week.
I'm happy to go taco. It is a safe word.
Okay.
But one thing that actually kind of followed on from that was I was thinking about Taco Bell. I don't think I've actually seen a Taco Bell in Australia, and we've talked about them multiple times now. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place, but
there's none in Henty, if that's what you're asking.
Well, look, there could well be a couple of Taco Bells there, probably fairly unlikely. But I would have thought that Australia's fairly well served for Mexican food. And I'm wondering, is Taco Bell going to go the way of some other big, successful US brands that have attempted to enter the Australian market and not succeed? Things like Starbucks, which came here in, I think, about 2000, with a big splash and made a lot of noise for a few years. But and there's I think a few stores still around, but it really just has not taken off. I think Australians just have better taste for coffee than Starbucks. Walmart, probably another one. Massive success in the US. Talk about it for years coming to Australia, but just doesn't seem to be able to do it. And I was just wondering whether Taco Bell is one of those ones, and really what it takes for a company to transfer huge US success into international expansion into the Australian market.
I'm so pleased you asked. So there's about 20 Taco Bell restaurants in Australia. There is some in New South Wales and Victoria. I think there's one in Perth, or they were going to open one in Perth. I think there might even be one in, I'm going to say Newcastle, on the central coast of New South Wales. So I think there are. I totally agree with you on the whole idea of transporting a culture such as Starbucks to another country. Starbucks, right, went really big into Europe. Guess which single country they could never crack in Europe?
Italy?
Italy, the best coffee culture. Starbucks really was omnipresent in many other economies, could never quite crack Italy. They came to Australia and they had big expansion plans. Australia actually has a great coffee culture. You go to cities like Melbourne, right? That's about as good a coffee culture as you will find anywhere in the world outside Italy, I suspect. Now, broad generalisation, don't know whether it's true, but that's what I think. Starbucks could never quite crack the coffee culture in Australia. Taco Bell's, now they're talking about opening more stores, Collins Foods, as you were, Taco Bell, right, there you go. Talking about opening more stores, but they've never really been able to get that brand to take off. Even KFC, until the last 2 or 3 years, really struggled in Australia. I mean, it had a great time in the 70s and 80s, but it diminished. Same with Pizza Hut. Great time in the 70s and 80s, but diminished. Now, both those two, KFC and Pizza Hut, are taking off now and they're expanding, which is great. Taco Bell has never done it. Starbucks is retreating. I mean, we've had our own local players who have really come and done a terrific job, Domino's being the obvious one. Am I talking too seriously about fast food at the moment?
No, this is exactly what I was curious about this expansion. And I know we actually transitioned quite seamlessly then from giving you a hard time over your mispronunciation of words into actual business content. There we go.
I once went to a coffee tasting, but it's actually coffee snorting in Seattle at the headquarters of Starbucks. So when I was with the Financial Review, I was based in the US for a bit, and a few international journalists got to go and meet the head snorter for Starbucks in their headquarters in Seattle.
Sean, are you absolutely sure someone wasn't having a lend of you?
No one was. No, they literally, they have these different coffee beans from around the world, and I would have thought you just sip them. Well, this guy, he snorted them. He sort of drank and snorted at the same time.
And was it just the smell?
It was, but it was kind of more than that. It was this horrendous noise, as you could imagine.
A reverse snore.
It was a reverse snore. I'm trying to put that in my mind. I think it is like an awake snore is probably kind of more accurate.
Sean, could you give us a demonstration of what it sounds like, just so that we can really paint the picture?
That one I won't. But this guy would just go from sort of cup to cup, snorting the coffee. Quite extraordinary.
Jeez. This was pre-COVID, I'm hoping. Social distancing and that environment would have been very difficult.
Hey, Adam.
Yes, Michael.
You know how Sean has had a very long and distinguished career as a journalist, and we've talked about
this isn't going well already.
and we've talked about, Adam, your corporate career and how we're gradually bringing that undone. And yes. and now I think it's Sean's turn, because he's had a very distinguished career as a journalist, and he's met a lot of people. And we had a great story the other week of meeting the legendary investor Warren Buffett in the toilets.
Yeah.
And so I'm proposing we introduce a new segment to the Sunday show, and it's called Name Drop. And it's Sean's story of meeting somebody famous and more often than not making a fool of himself. Sean, Do you have a story that might fit into this category without any notice whatsoever?
I know because we discussed this in the last week. I told you this story. This is not for general consumption.
Go on. It is now.
Oh, Michael. Okay,
Yes, Sean.
so my partner Jackie and I, we were in New York and we were staying at an extremely upmarket hotel down in Soho in New York called the Crosby, on Crosby Street in Soho. And we were very excited being able to stay at this. We were treating ourselves being able to stay at this flash hotel. And we oh dear, we walked in and there were a bunch of cameras there. We thought, oh, that's interesting. They're obviously not, wonder who's here. That's okay. We went up to the room, we checked in, went up to the room, beautiful room. We're on about the second or third floor. All Soho buildings are quite low rise. So we were sitting in these huge windowsills looking out at these cameras. Obviously the paparazzi waiting for someone famous. We were laughing about who it might be. I decided to go down and get some ice, actually. So I went down the elevator and I came out into the foyer and I saw walking towards me this woman who I thought, I know her. That's incredible. I know her. And as she's walking towards me, and, maybe we started about 10 metres away where I'm thinking, what's her name? I know. And in my mind, I thought, why do I know her? Well, I had lived in New York for a few years earlier, and I thought, I know, she's the woman who lived in the apartment just a few floors up from me. I thought, oh, of course. And so by this time, she'd gotten to me, and I said, hi, how you going? And she looked at me and said, hi, how are you going? I said, wonderful time in New York, isn't it? And I'm still thinking, what's the name of the woman? What's her name? Can't remember. She goes, it is a great time in New York. I said, a wonderful hotel. Wonderful hotel. Absolutely. Okay. See you again. Bye. We went our ways. I went upstairs. I told Jackie the story that I thought it was the woman who lived upstairs 5 years earlier. Anyway, I described who she was. Jackie went onto her phone and showed me a picture of the woman who I thought was the one from upstairs. And I went, that's her. How do you know? And she said, Taylor Swift, dickhead. And I've just admitted that story.
The best part of this is that that's one of many.
That's a particularly good one, though.
That's a particularly good story.
Talk about, the time that you realise you're old and you're a dad. That moment, she goes, Taylor Swift, dickhead. And,
Whack. Now, speaking of whack, Sean, I've just done a little check of the newsletter. I'll read you the opening line. On 3 December 2019, Queen Elizabeth II celebrated the 70th anniversary of the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation.
Yeah.
There's no second anniversary 70 years ago.
But why was it on that day? Was it 2 years to the day after that?
I was hoping that you were going to forget about it, Adam, because of what I do is then go through and will often edit Adam's contributions to the newsletter for brevity. And and so there's quite a bit of work involved in that. And I was worried that this was actually an edit that I had done. And so I thought, you know what, if I keep them talking about other things for the next 25 minutes, they're going to forget to check that. But of course you did go back and I probably shouldn't have confessed to that either. So anyway, shall we move on?
I think so. I want to get off anything to do with Taylor Swift, anything to do with music. Mind you, I have been watching this week the Peter Jackson film, or it's a 3-part miniseries on the Beatles. Wow, it is fantastic. And it's about at least 7 hours within the 3 shows, but it just shows this incredible spark between John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Now, Michael, you probably don't like the Beatles. I mean, are they as good as the Bee Gees? Is Barry Gibb, John Lennon? Not sure. But
they're a close second.
The show is spectacular. But I want to move on. We'll be back with more in a moment. Crown Resorts, Adam.
Yes.
They rejected the private equity bid from Blackstone a couple of days ago. Didn't really sound like a wholehearted rejection, though.
Isn't it curious? Crown Resorts, what a story. They get the permission to build this mighty hotel in Sydney on the basis that there's a high roller casino in there. They apply for the license is not given, and what is revealed has led to inquiries in New South Wales, in Victoria and in WA, and they've been in trouble ever since. So Blackstone's made a takeover bid. Crown have rejected it, but they have invited the private equity giant to have a look at the books of Crown and hope that they can still get a proposal away. It just feels a little bit like they're trying hard to get a deal done.
Yeah, it's in play. Crown is in play. James Packer has been told he has to sell down his 37% stake within 3 years. He wants to sell it down within 5 years. This is in play. $12.50 a share is about $1.50 higher than what it's trading at the moment. James Packer has to get out. The board has to be considering it. And just as you say, the fact that they didn't really reject it, they said, come and have a closer look. You'd think something's going to break here.
Sean, remember you did actually tip last week that it won't be long before James Packer sells.
Yeah, I don't like being reminded of that unless he sells. Because
well, look, this is kind of playing into it because it does feel like it's getting closer and closer to that point. Because as you say, Crown is certainly in play now, so it may in fact be just taking a slightly longer route to that point. So your prediction could well come true.
Yeah,
just a lot. Just probably not quite as quickly or in the way that you thought it would. So
it will eventually. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And another one, which, Michael, I know you were interested in, and I'd just be interested to know what the former CEO, Adamski, thinks of this one, because I've never known a CEO that wasn't overpaid, Adamski. It's executive pay. Now, a lot of the talk was about Russell and Kogan, the head of Kogan.com, earning $9 million, up from $600,000 the year before on the back of a huge jump in share price, right? Outrageous. No one's going to argue that. But generally, the concept of executive pay. So, Macquarie boss Shamara Wickramanayaka, she came in as number one. It was about $16 million. CSL boss Paul Pro, he was at $14 million. Those two are always 1 and 2. But then Greg Goodman from Goodman Group was number 3. He's actually always up there as well. Newcrest Mining pays well. BHP pays well. The banks used to pay really well. They still pay pretty well. I mean, Matt Comyn, the CEO of Commonwealth Bank, made $6.3 million, but that was only the 15th highest paid CEO, and he runs the biggest company in the country. I don't totally subscribe that these guys are overpaid.
I completely agree, particularly in relation to Matt Comyn. I think that you would not expect him to be at number 15 on the list. And Commonwealth Bank is such a big organisation and so many people rely on it. And there are so many kind of regulatory hoops that business has to keep jumping through. And he's got to take responsibility for all of that. So I don't think $6.3 million for that job is in fact overpaid.
He's probably, I don't know the numbers at Commonwealth Bank, but it'd be tens of thousands of staff, probably hundreds of thousands of shareholders. The buck stops with him, and as we've seen in Westpac's case, CEOs have gone in recent time. In fact, all the banks, apart from ANZ, the big three banks have lost CEOs in the last couple of years because the buck stops with them. They're just really big jobs. Adamski, former CEO.
Well, these are the jobs that we get to know about because they're publicly listed or they're semi-government or government institutions. There's so many more that are private companies that you don't know what people are being paid because those books aren't open for inspection. But I have to believe that it's a market consequence. That's ultimately, you can't blame any one of these CEOs but for getting paid as much as they can.
No, I totally agree. It's a board decision.
Yeah, it is the board's decision. That's right. And really what you see with Kogan's pay, it just looks remarkably out of context. Going up from 600,000 to 9 million, 15 times in 1 year. Now, I understand that they had a good run at the share price, but then it went down. Now, you'd have to say that the remuneration mechanism in that case did not work because it's hard to say that for shareholders that was a great outcome, that the best performance is behind them and now they're getting paid, but now that performance has come down. What do? Do you reclaw some of that? Do you take some of it back? Or do you just reduce, what it's worth next year to him? We only get to see part of the story through publicly listed companies and so on. There's a whole bunch of the private market that we'll never see. You can't blame the CEO for taking as much as they can, but you have to look at what the board has done in setting that CEO up and their remuneration.
Sounds like a sort of former CEO type response, that one, Michael. Would you agree? Don't blame the CEO. Worth every cent.
Absolutely.
I think we're coming to the end of our, I was going to say tether. That's a bit unfair. Time. Is there a better way to put it?
Yes, was it the end of your tether with a particular individual, or was it just with the conversation in general, Sean?
Well, I feel it's turning on me. I think we did a pretty good job early as we started the new Sunday edition to really hammer Adamski. I feel that it's now in the last few weeks turned on me. So, Adam, I have a suggestion for next week and the next few weeks after it.
No.
Let's talk to the bird-waving Michael Thompson. No, let's talk about the bird-waving Michael Thompson just a little bit more.
But he handles the audio. He'll just edit us out.
That's right. And also, I haven't got anything that you can criticise. I am squeaky clean.
Again, it speaks for itself.
Anyone who hears what goes on before recording and after recording will know that is a blatant lie.
All right. Let's see what you've got next week.
Thank you very much for listening to Fear and Greed, the Sunday edition. Michael, thank you so much for your contributions the last few weeks, including this week, because from next week, you're getting hammered.
Thanks, Sean.
What an invitation.
Something to look forward to. Adamski.
Yes.
Adamski, a pleasure as always.
Well, it was a pleasure to talk to you too, Sean.
It's Sunday, the 5th of December, 2021. I'm Sean Aylmer, and we hope you enjoyed the show and have a great Sunday.